she is doing an informative speech. So
This is the audience.
We're on the same.
Hey everybody,
Online,
what's up? Give a shout out to
Okay. Many people live their lives with some sort of problem, but most will never have to deal with the issue of enslavement. According to the U.S. State Department, between 14,000 and 17,000 people are trafficked into the U.S. each year. Everyone knows that human trafficking exists, but we don't understand why. So today, I'm going to talk to you first about some of the root causes for human trafficking. Secondly, about a few problems that are created from human trafficking. And lastly, what is being done to help these victims. Most of the information I will be relaying to you today comes from the Congressional Research Service website, a book on human trafficking called The Slave Next Door by Kevin Bales and Ron Sudalter, and 2 internet articles. After today, you, my audience, will have a better understanding of human trafficking. The root causes for human trafficking vary from country to country. According to a publication from the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime on human trafficking, trafficking is influenced or driven by social, economic, cultural, and other factors. Some examples of those factors are poverty, oppression, little or no human rights, and events like civil wars, which leave large populations of people displaced, creating an increase in their vulnerability to exploitation through trafficking. With any one of these factors, and a reason for trafficking of a person into a country, severe forms of trafficking are created. Although there are many forms of human trafficking, there are 2 severe forms of trafficking, and that is sex trafficking and trafficking of a person into a country for cheap domestic labor. With all the different forms of trafficking, many problems have been created. Some of the leading problems that have been created from this are the multi-billion-dollar industry that has been created from these crimes, the physical abuse taken by the victims, and the state of their mental health. The International Labor Organization estimates that human trafficking generates over $31 billion each year from forced labor alone. But hiding this money from the public isn't difficult for the human traffickers because they use violence to keep their victims silent. Much of the abuse that the victims face is being beaten every day, being threatened with knives, being burned with cigarettes, and some victims are even used for sexual services, which consequently leave them exposed to various sexually transmitted diseases. With all the different forms of physical abuse these victims face, it takes a toll on their mental health as well. These victims are so exhausted and so disoriented that even after they've been freed from trafficking, they are still afraid to communicate, and many still show signs of psychological abuse. According to an article journal from Health MED, which was accessed July 1st, 2013, post-traumatic stress disorder is one of the common consequences of this trauma. The article also states that some of the victims face depression and phobias. So with all of the problems that these victims face, the U.S. government has created many policies and programs to help these victims. Knowing that more than 10,000 people are trafficked into the U.S. is not only a cause for concern to the government, but also a cause to take action. Laws that are in place for these crimes range from funding to help crack down on traffickers to various relief programs for the victims that are illegal in the country, like the Victims of Human Trafficking and Violence Protection Act of 2000, which created a new visa status, also known as T status, for the victims of severe forms of trafficking, which gives them the opportunity to stay in the U.S. for up to 4 years. The U.S. government is also giving out grants, like through the Health and Human Services According to the Congressional Research Service website, some of these grants help with temporary housing, transportation, legal advice, and even cultural orientation. The Health and Human Services has also created the Rescue and Restore Public Awareness campaign to help promote public awareness about human trafficking. Although there are many more programs, policies, procedures, laws that have been created to help combat the fight against human trafficking, awareness is key for reduction and prevention. Even though human trafficking is a very intricate system, I covered the basic understanding of the root causes, some of the problems that have been created, and some of the actions that have been taken by the U.S. government. I leave you today with a quote from the book, The Slave Next Door, and I quote, "You are now active participants in the war against human trafficking. Welcome to the fight." End quote. Thank you.